Welcome back to another episode of SCP Meet. I got all these files on my desk, as you can see. There's a lot backed up, but one that came across my desk that we're going to be focusing on today is SCP-3008, aka Infinite IKEA. And what's interesting about Infinite IKEA is that it predates an extremely popular SCP Backrooms. Have you heard of it? Huh? Have you been on the internet? This story was submitted to the SCP Foundation by user Mortos on May 4th in 2017, which is 2 years earlier than when the Backrooms was submitted. Pretty cool. And you'll see that there's a lot of interesting similar themes in this, interdimensional kind of infinite mazes, labyrinths as it were. Without further ado, let's get into it. Which I'm going to take a little drink of my coffee here. Definitely coffee, not chocolate milk. Okay, Infinite IKEA is a Euclid class, which last time when we covered Cousin Johnny, it was a Keter class. So this is a different class of SCP. Kind of interesting. So what exactly is a Euclid class? A Euclid class SCPs are anomalies that require more resources to contain completely, or where containment isn't available, or where, oh man, I am dyslexic, dude. Or where containment isn't always reliable. Usually, this is because the SCP is insufficiently understood or inherently unpredictable. Euclid is the object class with greatest scope, and it's usually a safe bet that the SCP will be in this class if it doesn't easily fall into any other standard object classes. So, if there's not enough information on these things, right? If there's not enough to really conceptualize what this thing is, it's probably going to fall into a Euclid class. A Euclid class. Euclid. A Euclid class. I'm actually kind of interested with this because the containment procedures for something that is essentially a space, it isn't necessarily a creature itself. Let's get into the containment procedures, which the retail park containing SCP-3008 has been purchased by the Foundation and converted into the site. We're not going to tell you that, so don't even fucking ask. All public roads leading to it or passing by site have been redirected. So this place, it was a standing place where common people could go and interact with it, but now since then it's pretty much a landmark that you cannot find anymore. If there was roads going to it, they have been remade, redirected to where it is odd if you come across this place, but you still can, which is pretty creepy and pretty interesting. The entrance to SCP-3008 is to be monitored at all times, and no one is to enter SCP-3008 outside of testing, as permitted by the senior researcher. I don't know who that is. What's his name? What's her name? Right? What's their name? There we go. Now we're cooking. Humans exiting SCP-3008 are to be detained and then debriefed prior to the administration of anesthetics. Once you go in and once you come out, the anesthetics, they instill amnesia on you. You know what I mean? They give you the little Men in Black red pin light thing. They wipe your memory so you can't remember any of it. Depending upon the duration of their stay in SCP-3008, a cover story may need to be generated prior to their release. What I like about this is that even if you do go in, there's always going to be different stories and cases, and it has to be monitored. All the things going on in there, it's different per individual basis, which we'll get into, but it's very complex and interesting how this world works, how it shifts, how it can fuck with time and perception and even interdimensional travel. Buckle up. Any other entities exiting SCP-3008 are to be terminated. So if you're not human, they're getting gunned down. That little sentence is interesting because it really alludes to what other kind of shit is in there, and that's pretty fun. It's just kind of like a little bit of candy. SCP-3008 is a large retail unit previously owned by and branded as IKEA. A person entering SCP-3008 through the main entrance and passing out of sight of the doors will find themselves translocated to SCP-3008-1. This displacement will typically go unnoticed, as no change will occur from the perspective of the victim. They will generally not become aware until they try to return to the entrance. So this right here is pretty interesting. You walk into this place, it's just a regular IKEA, but without you even noticing, you're transported to the actual SCP, like the location, without even noticing. It's a seamless transition, and it's a barrier between worlds that's located in IKEA. I don't know. The flavor of that's just a lot of fun. So SCP-3008-1 is a space resembling the inside of an IKEA furniture store, extending far beyond the limits of what could physically be contained within the dimensions of a retail unit. Current measurements indicate an area of at least 10 kilometers squared, with no visible external terminators detected in any direction. Inconclusive results from the use of lasers, rangefinders, has led to the speculation that the space may be infinite. Which is where we start to see some of the parallels with even the Backrooms of a unit goes in and are kind of performing tests on this space. As of now, there is no conclusive ending to the building, so there is speculation that does just go on forever. Though rangefinders and lasers haven't found an ending to it, I wonder how much of it is the building itself is twisting and contorting and turning like a weird maze. Kind of like the movie Cube. The rooms itself, it's all in a giant cube-shaped building, but the rooms shift, the way that you move around, and it's all kind of unnoticeable. SCP-3008-1 is inhabited by an unknown number of civilians trapped within prior to containment. Gathered data suggests that they have formed a rudimentary civilization within SCP-3008-1, including the construction of settlements and fortifications for the purpose of defending against SCP-3008-2. Wow. So there are people that were just kind of shopping in the store, and they just got stuck, and now there's so many of them that they have started their own civilization in this place. They have their own set of rules. This is their existence now. That's really interesting. Especially people they've kind of given up on the idea of leaving, and they just fully exist in there. Which I think, to me, it alludes to the idea that these people have gone insane. That these people, it's like almost like a Stockholm Syndrome thing, adjusting to this new environment. In a way, part of me wants to believe that they enjoy it. You know, they're defending themselves against this new SCP, so let's talk about that. SCP-3008-2 are humanoid entities that exist within SCP-3008-1. While superficially resembling humans, they possess exaggerated and inconsistent bodily proportions, often described as being too short or too tall. They possess no facial features, and in observed cases, wear a yellow shirt and blue trousers consistent with the IKEA employee uniform. So here's the thing. So SCP-3008-1 is the building itself. It's the interdimensional, never-ending catacombs that you exist in, right? But SCP-3008-2 are the weird, faceless, homunculus IKEA employees that roam the halls here. I do like that there's a Minotaur aspect to this labyrinth. I will say, though, as a comic, I hate the faceless aspect. Or things are too short, too tall. I think there's different ways to make it more interesting of weird, uncanny stuff. Not saying it isn't fun, but I'm just saying, would it be even creepier if it was just clones of people? Clones of employees, right? Not necessarily just weird, exaggerated forms, but something where, could something just look inherently human? I guess that'd be too much like a Cousin Johnny thing, but I don't know. The faceless meme, especially with Slender Man and stuff, I'm just like, God, dude, give the fucking people a face, is all I gotta say. Imagine just a bunch of, like, Swedish people. Is that where IKEA is from? A never-ending labyrinth of Swedish people trying to come up and talk to you and sales pitch you on IKEA furniture? Holy shit, that is my fucking nightmare. SCP-3008-1 has a rudimentary day and night cycle, determined by the overhead lighting within the space, activating and deactivating at times, consistent with the opening and closing times of the original retail store. That's pretty fun. It's all artificial lighting, but it acts in the same way as day and night cycles. So you're still able to have a sense of time, but still, it would be just at a moment's notice, it isn't a gradual shift in lighting, it's just a hard cutoff of nighttime. During the night instances of SCP-3008-2 will become violent towards all other life forms within SCP-3008-1. During these bouts of violence, they have been heard to vocalize phrases in English that are typically variations of, "The store is now closed. Please exit the building." Once the day begins, SCP-3008-2 instances immediately become passive and begin moving throughout the SCP-3008-1, seemingly at random. They are unresponsive to questioning or other verbal cues in the state, though will react violently if attacked. So it's almost like zombie rules in some cases. Like I know Dead Rising, at night the zombies become almost more powerful and they're able to run around and stuff, but in this instances the night cycle just makes them ferocious and makes them want to fucking kill everything in sight. But I do like how they go into a weird, almost vegetative customer service-esque state during the day cycle, and really they're only provoked if you attack them, which let me tell you, a Swedish IKEA person, who wouldn't want to attack them? Right? The Swedes? My God. SCP-3008-1 is known to have one or more exits located within, though these exits do not appear to have fixed position, making it difficult to leave SCP-3008-1 once inside. Using any other door besides the main entrance to enter the structure or breaking through the walls of the retail unit leads into the non-anonymous interior of the original store. What that's saying is that even if you tried to break through a wall, I think that you wouldn't technically leave the store. You would just kind of keep entering in more and more stores. There's no way to break through the wall. You have to go specifically through one of these randomly positioned doors, which makes it kind of interesting too, because you have to like explore. You can't just follow the path. You have to navigate yourself and also know how to explore and not, I guess, get even further lost. That's a catch-22, isn't it? The catch-22 is that you have to explore enough, but the more that you explore, the more lost you technically get if you never find the door on the way out. It's kind of maddening. Pretty fun. Since containment began, 14 individuals have managed to exit SCP-300-8. Wow, that's surprisingly, more than I would expect. 14 people? Following extensive debriefing, all individuals have been administered amnestics and released, which basically means, like I said, they go, they wipe their mind, and they release them back to the public. And these people don't even realize that they were stuck here for whatever amount of time, which we're going to go into now. We don't really do this, but we luckily have, from someone who got lost in SCP-3008, we found their journals. I have my tape recorder here. They were recording their entire experience, which a human male, we'll call him Subject A, exited SCP-3008, followed 10 seconds later by an instance of SCP-3008-2. So he exited the building along with this kind of like weird IKEA employee creature. SCP-3008-2 caught and killed the man before itself being terminated by armed response personnel. So basically, 10 seconds later, the guy was going out. We had a response crew waiting for him to come out. We were going to brief him, but the man got caught and was killed immediately before also the SCP-3008-2 was basically gunned down as well. The incident represents the only time an instance of SCP-3008-2 has been seen exiting SCP-3008. A full autopsy on the corpse was performed. The employee has absolutely no blood, organs, or any necessary functions of life. It had no sexual reproductive organs or anything to reproduce. It was all stuck together, no bones or anything. It was just one block of skin. It did have one item inside of its body, which it's redacted. We don't know what exactly was the item in the body, but it was found where the heart was supposed to be. And the SCP-3008-2 regenerated back to life after the autopsy, making personnel think that once outside of SCP-3008-1, it can become even more anomalous, which is kind of interesting. Almost like the SCP-3008, the IKEA building itself is a prison that's imprisoning these creatures. Once they're out in the real world, they become more anomalous, they become more powerful, they're able to get more abilities. It's very interesting, which also makes you want to make sure that this thing is surveilled, that these things don't get out into the world, because God knows what can happen. Right? That's the only recorded time, mind you. It probably happens more often. And to have an entry log here is pretty interesting. Like to have a guy who basically journaled his entire experience, and we get to we have the tape recorder, it's recorded, so we get to hear some of his stuff. So this is entry 1. This is the second day the man has been in SCP-3008. So, Subject A enters SCP-3008-1 and begins to encounter a bizarre and unsettling experiences of being trapped within the store. The maze-like layout continuously changes, making it exceedingly difficult for the man to leave. And this is the first journal entry we have of him. Roll the tape. I will right now.
So, I'm writing this to document what I can only assume is my sudden descent into insanity. I haven't seen another person the entire time I've been here. I thought it was a prank at first. Realized that wasn't the case when I tried to backtrack.
So, So stopping there, the man is relatively sane here. I mean, obviously he's saying that he's slipping into insanity, but having somebody being trapped inside of this space would be pretty fucked up. You're sitting there, you're walking around, and then all of a sudden the lights just shut off, and you don't understand the rules of the SCP-3008 yet, the IKEA building, so you don't understand the night or day cycle. So it would be fucking horrifying, and especially you don't even know of all of these weird creatures walking around yet. Which, moving in, equipped with only his phone flashlight, Subject 8 is unable to traverse the darkness, so he decides to sleep through the night on some beds he found. The next day, he desperately searches for the exit, but to no avail. Luckily, he did find a restaurant serving meatballs. There was no one around, yet the meatballs were still warm. At least, he would not starve. That is kind of weird. That does make me think that this is precursing the monsters going in, and what's interesting is that these monsters, these Swedish IKEA monsters, are still making meatballs for people. And we get our next little journal entry here.
It's 9:10 a.m. now. The lights came back on a little while ago. I'm sure I've searched the entire area around where I came in now, and the exit obviously isn't here. So I'm gonna pick a direction and hope for the best.
I think he's beginning to realize that this is not a normal place, that this place that he is stuck in is pretty much hell. I mean, he's in a limbo at this point.
Today's video, we are partnered with our good friends at Bad Dragon. Which, let me tell you something, Bad Dragon's been a long-standing partner of this channel, and I just wanted to give them time today to give them a nice little shout-out, because if you're looking to explore the bedroom a little bit, if you're of age, then you might want to check out Bad Dragon. With some of these unique sculpts that look like this, you can either stick this inside you, or you can just put it on your mantle like I do. I definitely never stuck this in me before. It looks good on a shelf. Don't tell my wife any of this. But they have all kinds of things. They have game mats. They have sculptural holes where you can stick things inside of. You can shove things inside you, and the art is incredible on them, and they're made with high quality production standards. We've been to their warehouse many times, and everybody there, it's like being in fucking Willy Wonka's factory. Everybody's smiling, amazing work conditions, and you can really tell that these people give a fuck about making sure the quality is top notch and that the customer service is top notch. It's a wonderful, wonderful family, and seriously, if you're in the market to try to spice things up in your own life, maybe check them out. They're pretty fucking awesome. So that's Bad Dragon. Give them a check out, and thank you so much for partnering with us. You guys are the fucking best. We love you so much, and back to the video.
which entry 2 is just the next day, day 3, and Subject A's bizarre adventure through SCP-3008-1 continues. For 3 hours, Subject A walked in a straight line until he stumbled upon a ladder. Climbing up to get his bearings, the man peered out into the store, and it seemed like it stretched on endlessly, with shelves and tables. This is when Subject A noticed a person moving close by. This is another entry in his log.
Thought it was a staff member at first. He was wearing the uniform. Hell, maybe it was. Maybe freakish 7-foot-tall monsters with long arms, short legs, and no faces are just the kind of things they want working at Super IKEA. Damn thing completely ignored me, though. And with no eyes or ears, I can't even be sure it knew I was there. Thought about shoving it or something to get its attention, but its hands were big enough to crush a watermelon. So I decided against it. Just kept moving along, and eventually I lost sight of it, so I decided to carry on the way I was going.
I'll be honest with that. If I saw a giant monster that had hands that could crush watermelons, I don't think I'd be as cool and collected. I think the motherfucker feels pretty like, well, that was strange. Okay, well, I guess I'm not going to interact with that thing. Just feels odd. I feel like I'd be like, I'm gonna die here. If I saw a giant homunculus Swedish IKEA monster walking around with hands the goddamn size of, I mean, like an engine, a motor engine or something like that, I would be a lot more upset. I would be distressed. He's been in there 2 days. You know what I mean? You've been trapped inside an IKEA, and you see a Swedish IKEA monster walk around, and you're just like, well, I guess I'll keep going. Optimism would be extremely, extremely low at this point. Night begins to fall, and Subject A decides to hold up in the improbably hard and pointy table section of the store for the night. Before the night is over, the battery on his phone dies. The feeling that he lost his only lifeline begins to sink in. Oh, is this when it starts to sink in? When your battery dies? So now, I mean, he's sitting there, and now he realized, I think that maybe the fucking little easy-go-lucky attitude he had in the journal entry earlier, I think it's starting to fade. All because his fucking Motorola Sidekick or whatever is out of battery. I mean, I don't know. And what's crazy here is that entry 3 is day 7. He has been in this place for a week. 5 days later, this is his first interaction here. So for days, Subject A continues to press forward. The endlessly repetitive cycle of SCP-3008-1 begins to weigh on him. The only sign of progress is the changing signs overhead. On the 6th night, the man encountered another pair of staff members. They came running out from the dark like rabid dogs and began to chase him. Even though they appeared to have no mouths, they politely told him that the store was closed and that they needed to leave the building, which is very funny. And it also feels like this is what I imagine every Swedish person at night is like. But I will say that the juxtaposition between like saying something very polite and trying to be formal while trying to attack you like a rabid dog would be a bit polarizing. And Subject A narrowly escapes this encounter and discovers that there are other people living inside the store with him. And his next journal entry goes as followed.
Sprinting through IKEA in the dark like a madman. I saw it when I cleared another stand of those giant stock shelves all lit up with torches and floodlights. They've built a whole town in here. Got a massive wall built out of shelves and beds and tables and whatever else. I swear to God, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Anyway, I guess they saw me coming. Or maybe they heard my manly bellows of fear, because they had a gate open and 2 people were there waving me in. Heard the staff thing slam into the gate behind me after it closed. Still politely informing us all that the store was now closed. They wandered off eventually, though.
What's interesting about that is that I'm almost picturing a Mad Max Thunderdome situation happening inside this IKEA. Which is, when I've been to IKEA, what I feel like many times, a dystopian kind of future where people are fighting for various scraps. But the idea that this kind of civilization exists inside the IKEA, it's awesome. I'm hoping that as these entry logs go in farther, we get to kind of get the mindset of these people as well. Because building up a society for survival is one thing, but building up a society and doing, and just accepting your fate is another. It's kind of it's a weird kind of dilemma of being stuck in a horrible situation, which they call the town, quote-unquote, exchange, on account of the exchange and return sign hanging above them. The inhabitants consisted of over 50 people with regular-sized limbs and full set of facial features. After a full week, this will be the first night not spent alone and in complete darkness. So, we're led to believe that everybody that's inside of the exchange town is all human. And these are probably all people who have been stuck in the store, shoppers at some point, right? But it goes on to his 4th entry, which is day 8. A new sense of normalcy begins to set in for Subject A. Interacting with the townspeople alleviates the growing suspicions of insanity he has felt throughout his isolated journey. This is when the people of Exchange inform him of the other towns that inhabit SCP-3008-1, which roll the tape.
I found that fairly mind-boggling. How can that many people go missing with no one noticing? Surely someone would have noticed that everyone who goes to IKEA seems to fucking vanish. Or maybe maybe it's not everyone. Maybe we're just the lucky ones.
You're telling me that there are multiple towns inside of this IKEA. Not only that, but at this point too, even the subject A starts to question it too. How the fuck do people not realize, like, hey, he went to IKEA? Hey, did you know Jeremy went to IKEA and he hasn't come home? Yeah, that's weird. Rachel went to IKEA as well. Yeah, my cousin Steven, they're all gone? Okay. So it's probably definitely not the IKEA. We can at least rule out IKEA, right? They tell him more about the monsters that inhabit the store, which they have nicknamed, quote-unquote, the Staff. And during the day, they are harmless and stock the store with food and water and various restaurants throughout the store. Once the lights go out, they go, quote-unquote, fucking bonkers. I do like that these anomalous creatures do perform daily tasks. They do still proactively work for the store that is in no way in business. But to them, it is a running thing. It almost makes you think that this kind of SCP came into existence just into the IKEA, and that this was the only kind of world they knew. Same with like a kind of religion that they follow. It's all that they've ever known, so that's what they continuously perform to do. So entry 5 is day 10, and time has lost its meaning here. Most of the inhabitants have stopped keeping track, and one named Chris says he's been there for years. Rumors circulate about those who managed to escape, and others speak of seeing exits that vanish before their eyes. While out scavenging with Sandra and Jerry, Subject A stumbles upon a brightly illuminated tower. It is made of wood, goes all the way up to the ceiling, and in one of the shops, there was a telephone on the wall, to which the man tried to use it. And this is the tape. Let it fucking roll.
There was a voice on the other end, but they were just talking nonsense. Random words strung together with no real meaning. Have you ever seen a video of someone with aphasia? Kinda sounded like that. Didn't answer me when I spoke to them anyway. Sandra says all the phones in here are the same.
The deal of him calling this makes me think that, one, I don't think if the guy was speaking that word salad-esque dialect of not making sense, I would assume it was one of the monsters and that they would, like, know which telephone I'm using, right? They'd be pissed off. They'd be like, oh, he's here. You know, I would be tracked through this kind of IKEA. I wouldn't like that. I probably wouldn't be using those phones. I mean, out of desperation, you'd want to, but I don't know. Which entry 6, we begin to lose track of days. The exchange was attacked by the staff, and over 20 of them rushed the walls and asked us politely to leave. This happens quite often, so the exchange is equipped with holes on the side of the walls to defend themselves. And this is one of his little bits as followed.
They don't seem to bleed, which is weird, but they go down as easily as a regular person once you start sticking holes in them.
So they're not necessarily bleeding out and showing like the normal wounds, but they are getting physically hurt and killed like normal people would as well while they're defending this place. The question I still have is, they're obviously attacking them, but all we've heard so far is that they've just asked them to politely leave. And not once has Subject A said, could you escort me to the exit? Not once. Could that be a way to solve this SCP? I don't know. Which the dead bodies will attract more to come. So in the morning, they hauled them away to the quote-unquote pickup area, which is again named because of the sign hanging overhead. And it goes into the last little bit of here until we get into our next entry, but it goes as followed.
The pickup was grisly. There were hundreds, maybe thousands of dead staff all piled up. There was no smell, which was a blessing. Apparently, in addition to not bleeding, these things don't rot either. My curiosity got the better of me while we were unloading them, so I took a look at one of the more cut-up ones. They're just skin, or something that looks like skin all the way through. No muscle, no bone, no organs. Are they even really alive in the first place?
What's interesting about this before we go into the next entry is that earlier before, we do know the tragic ending of this man's story, but we also know the creatures come back to life and they're even more powerful. So I'm wondering if that being in this state, in this IKEA, if it is kind of a place of, it's limbo. It's an interdimensional place that neither life exists or doesn't. Does time actually move regular here? I'm not sure. All I know is that they could just be biding time. They could just be these skin sacks that as soon as they went back outside, that they could reanimate and come back to life. So maybe you don't necessarily die, or you're not really alive here. You're just in purgatory, which is kind of sick. I like the idea of that. Which entry 7, once again, still don't know the day. Don't know what the fuck's going on, right? So this afternoon, some of the inhabitants from a town called Trolleys showed up at the gates of the exchange. The staff broke through the walls and tore the town apart during the night. The town had over 100 citizens, but only 12 of them survived. The people of exchange opened the gates and let the survivors in. Out of curiosity, Subject A asked the new arrivals of how many other towns were out there. Together, they came up with the names of 20 different locations. Holy shit, that's actually pretty crazy. And here's what he said about that.
The motto for this place should be, how is that even possible? Surely someone somewhere must be looking for the thousands of people that must be in here.
once again, that kind of just makes me it tips the idea that time isn't moving realistically. We're in a place that it's not in any kind of reality. So the idea that these people are being looked for, I mean, there are probably people who are being wanted and looked for, but I don't think as much time has passed as he really thinks, which is pretty scary. But the idea too of 20 different towns is pretty fucking crazy. So entry 8, after being there for over 2 months, not much has changed, and a few new people have shown up, and the staff attack the exchange once or twice a week. During one of the attacks, a man named Jared was killed. And he goes on to talk about Jared, and I don't think he's talking about the one from Subway. Roll it.
It was awful, frankly. Turns out regular humans still bleed in here, even if the staff don't. We tried our best, but none of us are doctors. Jared was a good guy. He deserved better. We all do.
So I'm interested if these things, if they rip people apart. We've had one instances where it said that their hands were big enough to destroy watermelons. So I'm wondering if they just like rip and tear, if they dig their hands into people. I'm not really sure. But all we know is that Jared, definitely not the guy from Subway. All right, not the creep, probably a good guy. What if it was Jared from Subway and no one knew, but they've been gone for so long that they don't really know about Jared's the actual shit he does. Anyways, entry 9, still don't know the day. Subject A notices a quadcopter flying over the exchange. What do you mean? Like a full-blown copter? A drone. Okay, whatever. He says this.
I thought it meant that someone was finally looking for us, that help was on the way. Apparently it's not the first time this has happened though. Same thing happened a few months ago and everyone's still here. No idea if it saw us. It didn't stop if it did. Just kept flying until we could no longer see it.
Which, there is a note here. It says, based on the recovery time of the journal, this entry appears to line up approximately with our first successful test piloting a drone inside SCP-3008-1. Analysis of footage shows a walled settlement under a sign labeled Exchange and Returns. Attempts to relocate the settlement failed. Origin of previously sighted drones is unknown. They did try to go in and try to find these people, but it is a shifting labyrinth. It has to be a thing, it's a structural anomaly. It's just moving on its own, and it's redirecting everything. So even if you tried to go in there and look for people, if you found anyone, it would be out of sheer luck. But even getting out would be lucky as well. So, We're on entry 10, and Subject A and the inhabitants of the exchange begin to reminisce about the lives they once lived outside SCP-3008-1. Unfortunately, this brings everyone's mood down as they remember the families and pets they left behind. Some of the inhabitants have gaps in common knowledge and have no recollection of certain historical events. Interesting. So some people can't even remember some of the basic historical things. I'm curious to learn more. Thank God we have a journal entry.
The more I thought about it, though, the more it started to explain a few things. What if the reason no one is looking for all of us missing people is because we haven't come from the same place? This is gonna sound weird. Maybe that should be the motto for this place. But what if all the people have come from different dimensions? Realities. Sarah comes from a place where there's no Statue of Liberty. They didn't launch a space station where Wassam is from. If everyone here is from a different place, even from ones that seem identical, no huge missing persons panic. No mass search. Would just be a blip. Single missing person in a world of non-stop news.
Okay, I just want to say that I wish Subject A would stop saying this should be the motto of the place. We fucking get it. It's weird. Okay? Just want to say that. Subject A, I want to like you, but at the same time, I'm like, come on. Also, I understand time. I don't know how, I don't know. I'm curious. I want to wait till it's in because we're closing in to the final deal, but I want to give my thoughts on that. But interdimensional travel, we're getting to Rick and Morty levels of like interdimensional travel and stuff like that. It has been 6 months since Subject A arrived. The routine is still the same. New people arrive every few weeks or so. Food supplies go up and down, and inhabitants from nearby towns come to check in and trade supplies. Which he says this.
It's comforting, in a way. A reminder that we aren't alone here. Some small glimmer of civilization.
The attacks keep getting worse. The staff now raids the exchange 3 or 4 times a week instead of the previous maybe 2, once or twice. And their numbers have seemed to doubled. Subject A decided to follow them after an attack, but a search came up empty-handed. All they do is aimlessly walk around the aisle. Where are they coming from? And why have the attacks increased in frequency? The inhabitants of the exchange start to reinforce their walls and arm themselves better. Which we do have another note here in the document that says, no new personnel have entered SCP-3008 at site, obviously, because I'm not going to tell you where it's at, in the time span indicated in the entry. So at this point, no one else is entering the actual building. I think by this point that it's actually officially sealed off. Which, the next entry, entry 12, the attacks are getting bad now, almost every night, and with so many staff that the bodies almost pile high enough for others to climb up the walls. I think we're in real trouble here. We're starting to do a little fucking DayZ thing. Remember that scene? Really popular scene. They kept playing the trailers, and everyone's like, this movie sucks. But you did get to see the zombies crawl over each other. Kind of cool. Just want to say that. Entry 13!
I think exchange is done. We got hit pretty bad last night. Not many casualties, but the wall is wrecked. We finally figured out why the attacks have been escalating too. The box of supplies had a chunk of one of the staff in there. No idea how it happened, but apparently a piece of one will draw them as well as a full body. Too late now in any case. There's too many bodies for us to haul away and still have time to fix the wall before night. Candace has called a meeting. I suspect there will be talk of abandoning exchange. Maybe try and get shelter at checkouts or something. It's already getting late though. I don't think we'll have enough time to make it. Maybe some of us will. I was fine for that first week out in the dark after all, but then how often can I keep getting lucky? I'm only writing this for a sense of closure, I guess. For me or for anyone who finds this. This is my final entry here. I hope whoever's reading this is doing so from outside of this place. My biggest fear, if I do die tonight, I'll just wake up here again in the morning.
As a note, this is the last entry that Subject A made, and it is assumed that while attempting to reach the quote-unquote checkouts settlement, he was separated from the rest of his group by pursuing a 3008-2 instance, and he just kind of happened upon an exit where he left. You know, a lot of the SCP Foundation people saw him, but immediately he was attacked and killed by a SCP-3008-2, a Swedish madman, as it were. So here's what I thought. That closes out our Infinite IKEA document itself, and this is the thing about Infinite IKEA. It's interesting to see a precursor to the back rooms. There's a couple complaints I have in terms of, you know, how fun is this one? I am not a fan of faceless creatures. In ways of being uncanny, I think there's more interesting ways of being uncanny. Even with something like Cousin Johnny, it takes the identity of a regular human being and forces you to believe that it's a part of your family. Is a level of uncanniness that is really fun. But just extent, like, you know, if things are a little shorter, a little too tall, it's kind of like some Slender Man territory, which maybe just because Slender Man was so popular that everything was kind of based around that. I know 2014, 2015 area of Slender Man was obsessive, but the faceless aspect is, I don't know. But I will say that having established societies inside of an Infinite IKEA is very interesting, especially people having their own towns and people that are having to man off attacks. It is very dystopian. It makes me think, like I said, Mad Max Thunderdome kind of stuff, and people fighting to survive inside of this labyrinth hell that is manufactured around IKEA is just really interesting. The idea of people being from different times and different dimensions, I don't know. I mean, it does have a layer of interest to me, but at the same time, I kind of just wish it was people around a specific area that were just affected by this IKEA and it's a giant cover-up. I think having like a government kind of foundation cover things up is so much more malicious, you know, like, because the whole thing is like, why is no one looking for us? Well, the government or the outside forces or the foundation could just be like, oh, they're dead, and everyone's mourning and people are moving on with their lives while you're still existing and trying to get out, but people have already been moving on. To me, that's more horrific. It's a little more crazy, and it also isn't as weird as like having like the awkward kind of cringe conversation of someone being like, yeah, well, I just wanted to see the Statue of Liberty, and some other person being like, Statue of Liberty? They don't know what it is. To me, I'm like, that's just cringe. I don't know. But all in all, as a precursor to one of the most famous online horror genres of the backrooms, it feels like a really interesting thing. And I love the idea of just the familiarity of IKEA, because it is hell going in there. It is a giant labyrinth, and I can see how easily this idea would come around. So it is really fun. So, you know, as another SCP file down in the books, I just got to say, this is a fun one. I'd like to see a fun, like, rendition of this. Like, this would be a fun little first-person experience kind of thing, being able to go around a never-ending IKEA, and also to feel like, you know, fortifying your own kind of area. How do you think you would survive in an infinite IKEA? You know what I mean? Myself personally, I'd probably just put a bullet in my brain, because that sounds terrible. Okay, all right. Okay. So until next time, be sure to comment down other SCPs you want me to check out or review, and we will catch you on the next one. Stay safe, my friends. Bye bye.